In the cold vastness of space, where empires rise and fall like distant stars, one truth echoes through every corridor of power: never judge a species by their appearance. The Galactic Council learned this lesson the hard way when they dismissed humanity as a primitive, emotional race unworthy of true membership. They saw humans as soft, weak creatures clinging to outdated concepts like honor and sacrifice. They were catastrophically wrong. When the Zephyrian Empire's massive mothership appeared in Earth's solar system, a vessel so large it cast shadows across entire moons, the galaxy expected humanity's swift surrender. The ship was a monument to technological supremacy, housing weapons that could crack planets and shields that had never been breached. Its captain, Vextar, was legendary for his tactical genius and ruthless efficiency. But they hadn't counted on Commander Sarah Chun, a woman whose quiet demeanor masked a brilliant strategic mind forged in Earth's most brutal conflicts. While alien diplomats debated humanity's fate in grand chambers, Sarah was studying weaknesses, calculating odds, and preparing for a gambit so audacious that even her own species thought it impossible. What happened next would shatter every assumption the galaxy held about human capability and redefine what it meant to underestimate Earth's children. Because sometimes the greatest victories come not from superior firepower, but from the uniquely human ability to turn desperation into determination and impossibility into inevitability. This is the story of how one human woman seized the most powerful warship in galactic history, and in doing so, saved not just her species, but changed the course of civilization itself. The emergency klaxons wailed across Earth's orbital defense platform as Commander Sarah Chun stood motionless before the massive holographic display. The image rotating slowly in front of her defied comprehension. A Zephyrian mothership so enormous that Earth's entire moon could have fit comfortably in its docking bay. The vessel stretched nearly 200 kilometers from bow to stern, its obsidian hull bristling with weapon arrays that could reduce continents to ash. "Ma'am, the Galactic Council is demanding our immediate surrender," reported Lieutenant Jackson, his voice barely steady as he read from his console. "They're giving us 6 standard hours to respond before the Zephyrians begin orbital bombardment." Sarah remained silent, her dark eyes studying every detail of the alien warship. At 42, she had spent the last 20 years climbing through Earth's military ranks, earning her position not through political connections, but through a combination of tactical brilliance and an almost supernatural ability to remain calm under pressure. Her colleagues often joked that she could plan a dinner party while artillery shells exploded around her. Today, that reputation would be tested like never before. The bridge around her buzzed with controlled panic as officers relayed increasingly grim reports. Earth's orbital defense grid, impressive by human standards, was laughably inadequate against Zephyrian technology. Their most powerful plasma cannons would barely scratch the mothership's shields. Their fastest interceptors would be swatted aside like insects. "Commander," called out Captain Reynolds from the communications station, "Admiral Morrison is on Priority Channel 1. He wants to speak with you immediately." Sarah nodded curtly and activated her personal comm unit. Admiral Morrison's weathered face appeared on her wrist display, his expression grim. Behind him, she could see the chaos of Earth's primary military command center, with dozens of officers scrambling to coordinate a defense that everyone knew was hopeless. "Sarah, I need your assessment," Morrison said without preamble. "Our analysts are saying we have zero chance of meaningful resistance. The political leadership is already drafting surrender documents." "The analysts are correct about conventional resistance," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the crisis unfolding around them. "Direct engagement would result in complete annihilation of our forces within minutes." Morrison's shoulders sagged slightly. Even Sarah Chun, the woman who had somehow turned defeat into victory during the Martian Rebellion, was acknowledging the hopelessness of their situation. "However," Sarah continued, and Morrison's attention snapped back to full focus. Conventional resistance is not our only option. Before the Admiral could respond, the bridge's primary display shifted to show an incoming transmission. The image that appeared made every human on the bridge instinctively step backward. Captain Vextar of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet was a magnificent and terrifying sight. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, his reptilian features were aristocratic in their cruel perfection. Scales that shifted from deep purple to gold covered his elongated skull, and his 4 arms moved with predatory grace as he adjusted his ceremonial armor. Humans of Earth. Vextar's voice resonated with the confidence of absolute superiority. I am Captain Vextar, commander of the battleship Dominion's Edge. Your pathetic world has been selected for integration into the Zephyrian Empire. You will surrender unconditionally or face complete annihilation. The Zephyrian's main eyes, larger than human fists, fixed directly on the camera with hypnotic intensity. His secondary eyes, positioned above his temples, scanned constantly for threats with predatory alertness. Your species has been evaluated by the Galactic Council and found to be marginally useful as a labor force. Those who comply will be relocated to appropriate work facilities. Those who resist will be eliminated. You have 6 of your hours to respond. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Sarah, however, had been using the entire communication to study the background of Vextar's command center. Every detail was important now. The positioning of consoles, the number of crew members visible, the layout of what appeared to be the mothership's primary bridge. Ma'am, Lieutenant Jackson's voice was barely above a whisper. What do we do? Sarah turned away from the display and walked to the bridge's central planning station. With quick, precise movements, she began calling up detailed scans of the Zephyrian vessel, technical specifications that human intelligence had gathered over the past several years of tense diplomatic relations. We do exactly what they don't expect, she said, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. We attack. The bridge erupted in shocked voices. Captain Reynolds actually stood up from his station. Commander, with all due respect, that's suicide. Our entire fleet couldn't even damage their shields. You're absolutely correct, Captain, Sarah acknowledged, pulling up a 3-dimensional cutaway view of the mothership's interior. Our fleet cannot damage their shields from the outside. But what about from inside? She manipulated the hologram, zooming in on specific sections of the massive vessel. The Zephyrians are supremely confident in their technological superiority. They've never faced a species crazy enough to attempt what I'm proposing. Admiral Morrison's voice crackled through her comm unit. Sarah, what exactly are you proposing? A boarding action, sir. Direct infiltration of the mothership's command center. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Morrison's voice returned, carefully controlled. Commander, please tell me you're not suggesting what I think you're suggesting. I'm suggesting we take their ship, Admiral. Not destroy it, capture it. Lieutenant Jackson's tactical display began beeping insistently. Commander, we're detecting massive energy buildups across the mothership's weapon arrays. They're charging their bombardment systems. Sarah glanced at the readings and nodded. They're demonstrating their power. Vextar wants us to see exactly what we're facing. She turned back to the holographic display, her mind racing through calculations and possibilities. The Zephyrian mothership was indeed a marvel of engineering. Its hull was composed of metamaterial that could adapt its molecular structure to resist different types of weapons. Its shields operated on principles that human science barely understood, creating a barrier that had never been penetrated in over 3 centuries of galactic warfare. But Sarah had spent her career studying the psychology of warfare as much as its technology. The Zephyrians' greatest strength was also their greatest weakness, their absolute confidence in their own superiority. Pull up the intelligence files on Zephyrian military doctrine, she ordered. Within moments, the relevant data appeared on her display. Sarah scanned through reports from human diplomatic missions, observations from neutral species, and intercepted communications that had been decoded over the years. Here, she said, highlighting a specific section. Zephyrian command protocols require the captain to personally oversee any planetary subjugation. Their entire command structure is aboard that ship, including backup commanders, tactical specialists, and their regional governor. Captain Reynolds leaned over her shoulder to read the data. I'm not seeing how this helps us, ma'am. If anything, it makes the situation worse. They have their entire leadership coordinating against us. No, Captain. It gives us a single point of failure. Sarah's fingers moved rapidly across the interface, calling up structural diagrams and crew layouts. The Zephyrians have never lost a mothership in battle. Ever. Their doctrine doesn't even include protocols for dealing with internal threats, because the possibility has never been considered. She rotated the holographic model, pointing to a specific section near the ship's center. Their command center is located here, approximately 60 kilometers from the outer hull. It's heavily armored against external attack, but the internal security is designed primarily to prevent crew mutinies, not external infiltration. Commander, Admiral Morrison's voice carried a mixture of desperation and hope. How exactly do you propose getting inside their ship? Sarah smiled for the first time since the crisis began, but it was not a pleasant expression. We're going to use their own arrogance against them. Vextar expects us to either surrender or launch a hopeless frontal attack. He's not expecting us to request a parley. The bridge crew exchanged confused glances. Lieutenant Jackson spoke up. A parley, ma'am? You want to negotiate? I want to get invited aboard their ship, Sarah corrected. Zephyrian protocol requires them to honor diplomatic requests from species facing integration. It's part of their legal framework for justifying conquest. They have to offer the opportunity for formal surrender. She pulled up another set of files, these focusing on Zephyrian social and military customs. When a species requests formal surrender negotiations, the commanding officer is required to receive representatives aboard the mothership. It's a matter of honor and legal precedent. Captain Reynolds was nodding slowly as he began to understand. You want to get aboard as a diplomatic representative. Not just aboard, Captain. I want to get to their command center, to meet face-to-face with Vextar himself. The implications of what she was suggesting began to dawn on the bridge crew. Admiral Morrison's voice was carefully neutral when he spoke again. Sarah, assuming you could somehow get aboard their ship, you'd be facing the most advanced military technology in the galaxy, surrounded by hundreds of enemy combatants, with no backup and no escape route. Yes, sir. That's exactly what I'm proposing. She turned to face the bridge crew directly, her expression serious but determined. I know how this sounds. I know the odds. But consider our alternatives. We can surrender and watch our species become slaves. We can fight conventionally and watch our world burn. Or we can attempt something so audacious that even if it fails, it will send a message to the galaxy that humanity does not yield easily. Lieutenant Jackson's console chimed with an incoming message. Commander, we're receiving another transmission from the Zephyrian ship. The bridge's main display activated again, but this time it showed a different Zephyrian, smaller than Vextar, but no less intimidating. This one wore the elaborate ceremonial robes of a diplomatic attaché. Humans of Earth, the alien began. I am Subcommander Thexera, diplomatic liaison for the Imperial Fleet. Captain Vextar, in his infinite mercy, is prepared to receive representatives of your species to discuss the terms of your surrender. You will provide no more than 3 individuals, unarmed, to be transported to our vessel within 2 of your hours. This is your only opportunity to ensure the survival of your population. The transmission ended, and Sarah turned to Admiral Morrison's image on her comm unit. Admiral, I need authorization to accept this invitation. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of impossible decisions. Sarah, what you're suggesting is beyond dangerous. It's essentially a suicide mission with the slimmest possible chance of success. Yes, sir, but it's the only mission with any chance of success. Another pause. What do you need? 2 volunteers to accompany me. Specialists who understand that we're not going there to negotiate. Morrison nodded slowly. I'll contact you within the hour with authorization and personnel assignments. Sarah, good luck. The communication ended, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts and the massive image of the Zephyrian mothership rotating slowly on the main display. Around her, the bridge crew continued their preparations for Earth's defense, but she could sense their growing hope. For the first time since the alien vessel had appeared, humanity had a plan that was more than mere survival. Sarah walked to the observation deck and stared out at the vast alien ship floating in space like a dark mountain. Its surface was so black it seemed to absorb light itself, broken only by the occasional pulse of energy from its weapon systems. Smaller vessels, each one larger than Earth's most powerful warships, moved around it like sharks circling prey. In less than 2 hours, she would be aboard that vessel, surrounded by an alien crew that viewed humanity as barely above livestock. She would be attempting something that military historians would either call the most brilliant tactical maneuver in human history or the most spectacular failure. But as she studied the alien ship, Sarah felt a calm certainty settling over her. The Zephyrians had made one critical error in their assessment of humanity. They had mistaken Earth's technological limitations for weakness and humanity's emotional nature for instability. They were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous opponent is the one who has nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Her comm unit chimed with an incoming message from Admiral Morrison. Commander, you have full authorization. Your team is being assembled now. And, Sarah, make them regret underestimating us. Sarah smiled again, and this time it was genuinely warm. Copy that, Admiral. We'll see you on the other side. As she turned away from the observation deck, the first phase of the most audacious military operation in human history was about to begin. In 2 hours, Commander Sarah Chun would board the most powerful warship in the galaxy, carrying with her not just the hopes of her species, but a plan so dangerous and unprecedented that success would require redefining the very meaning of impossible. The small human shuttle approached the Zephyrian mothership like a minnow swimming toward a whale. Commander Sarah Chun sat in the pilot's seat, her hands steady on the controls despite the magnitude of what lay ahead. Beside her, Master Sergeant Kyle Torres checked and rechecked his equipment, though equipment was a generous term for the limited tools they'd been able to conceal within diplomatic protocols. In the passenger compartment behind them, Dr. Elena Vasquez reviewed her tablet one final time. As Earth's leading xenobiologist and one of the few humans who had extensively studied Zephyrian physiology, her knowledge would be crucial to their mission success. Approaching Docking Bay 7, Sarah announced, her voice calm despite the growing mass of alien metal filling their view screen. The mothership's hull stretched endlessly in every direction, its surface marked by geometric patterns that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. Torres adjusted his diplomatic uniform, which concealed a variety of tools that would have been impossible to explain if discovered. Ma'am, I've been thinking about their security protocols. Even if we reach the command center, we'll be facing hundreds of crew members. Not hundreds, Sergeant, Dr. Vasquez corrected from behind them. According to my research, Zephyrian command centers operate with minimal personnel during standard operations. Their technology is so advanced that most functions are automated. Captain Vextar likely has no more than 20 individuals on the bridge at any given time. Sarah nodded, her attention focused on the approaching docking bay. The opening in the mothership's hull was large enough to accommodate vessels 10 times the size of their shuttle. Automated guidance systems took control of their craft, drawing them inexorably into the alien vessel's mechanical embrace. 20 highly trained alien warriors with advanced weapons and armor, Torres muttered, against 3 humans with improvised equipment. 20 aliens who have never faced a serious threat aboard their own ship, Sarah corrected. They're operating in what they consider a completely secure environment. That's going to work in our favor. The shuttle settled onto a landing platform with barely a tremor, testament to Zephyrian engineering precision. Through the view screen, They could see a reception committee waiting for them. 6 Zephyrian guards in ceremonial armor, accompanied by the diplomatic attaché they had seen in the earlier transmission. "Remember," Sarah said, activating the shuttle's external communication system, "we're here to negotiate humanity's surrender. We're desperate, defeated representatives looking for any way to save our people. Let them see what they expect to see." The shuttle's airlocks cycled open, and Sarah stepped on alien metal for the first time in her life. The sensation was oddly anticlimactic. The deck plating felt solid and normal beneath her feet, and the artificial atmosphere was comfortable and breathable. But the sounds were different. A subtle harmonic hum that seemed to resonate through the ship's structure, and the whisper of air circulation systems designed for a biology vastly different from human physiology. Subcommander Thexera approached them with measured steps, his scaled features arranged in what Sarah hoped was diplomatic courtesy rather than predatory anticipation. Like all Zephyrians, he moved with fluid grace that reminded her uncomfortably of large hunting cats. "I'm Subcommander Thexera," he said in accented but clear English. "Captain Vextar has honored your species by agreeing to receive you personally. You will follow me, and you will make no sudden movements." The 6 guards fell into formation around them, though their weapons remained holstered. Sarah noted their positions carefully, 2 in front, 2 behind, and 1 on each flank. Professional positioning, but not paranoid. They were being escorted, not captured. As they walked through the mothership's corridors, Sarah fought to hide her amazement at the scale of everything around them. The passages were wide enough for vehicles to pass through comfortably, and the ceilings stretched 4 meters overhead. Emergency stations and control panels were positioned at intervals that suggested the normal crew was significantly larger than humans. But what struck her most was the relative emptiness of the corridors. They passed only a handful of Zephyrian crew members, all of whom barely glanced at the human delegation. To them, this was routine, another species arriving to formalize their defeat. "The command center is located in the ship's central core," Thexera explained as they walked. "Captain Vextar wishes you to understand the magnificence of Zephyrian technology before you discuss terms." Dr. Vasquez spoke up for the first time since boarding. "We're grateful for the captain's consideration. Our scientists are eager to understand how your people have achieved such remarkable advances." It was the perfect response, humble, appropriately awed, and exactly what Zephyrian ego expected to hear from a defeated species. Sarah could see Thexera's posture shift slightly, becoming more relaxed and self-satisfied. They entered a transport tube that accelerated them smoothly toward the ship's center. Through transparent walls, Sarah could see the mothership's interior structure. Vast chambers filled with machinery whose purpose she could only guess, manufacturing facilities that seemed to operate without any visible crew, and what appeared to be entire city blocks worth of living quarters. "How many individuals serve aboard this vessel?" she asked, making her voice sound appropriately intimidated. "The Dominion's Edge maintains a complement of 12,000 crew members," Thexera replied proudly. "The finest warriors, scientists, and technicians in the Empire. 12,000. The number was both reassuring and terrifying. Reassuring because it meant the ship was too large for effective internal security. There would be areas where 3 humans could move undetected. Terrifying because it represented the sheer scale of what they were attempting. The transport tube delivered them to a security checkpoint where more guards scanned them with devices that looked disturbingly thorough. Sarah held her breath as the scanners passed over Torres's concealed equipment. But the Zephyrian technology seemed focused on detecting conventional weapons rather than the improvised tools they carried. "You are cleared for entry to the command sector," announced the security officer. "Remember that any hostile action will result in immediate termination." Beyond the checkpoint, the corridors took on a different character. The walls were decorated with battle honors and conquest memorials, each one representing another species that had fallen to Zephyrian might. Sarah counted at least 30 different worlds commemorated in the displays they passed. Impressive records of achievement, Dr. Vasquez commented, and again her tone was perfect, awed but not threatening. The Zephyrian Empire has brought order to this entire galactic sector, Fexera confirmed. Your species will benefit greatly from integration into our civilization. They passed through another security barrier, this one clearly more significant. The guards here wore different armor, more elaborate and obviously more advanced. Sarah noted the positioning of weapon emplacements and monitoring systems, filing away every detail for later use. Finally, they arrived at the command center itself. The chamber was even more impressive than the intelligence reports had suggested. The ceiling soared 6 meters overhead, supported by columns that pulsed with energy conduits. The central area was dominated by a holographic display that showed not just Earth's solar system, but dozens of other star systems across the galactic sector. Captain Vextar stood at the center of it all, his imposing figure made even more dramatic by the technological magnificence surrounding him. When he turned to face the human delegation, Sarah had to consciously resist the urge to step backward. The Zephyrian captain was a creature born for command, and his presence seemed to fill the entire chamber. "Humans," he said, his voice carrying easily across the space between them, "you stand aboard the most powerful vessel in galactic history. The Dominion's Edge has conquered 47 worlds and has never tasted defeat." He gestured toward the holographic display, where Earth appeared as a small blue surrounded by tactical markers. "Your world is already within our grasp. Your orbital defenses are negligible. Your ground forces are primitive. Resistance is not merely futile, it is meaningless." Sarah forced herself to look appropriately intimidated while she studied the command center's layout. She counted 19 Zephyrian crew members at various stations, plus Vextar himself, and the guards who had escorted them. The command crew was focused on their tasks, monitoring the various systems that kept the massive ship operational. "We understand our position, Captain," she said, allowing her voice to carry a tremor of fear. "Earth's leadership has sent us to discuss terms for our surrender." Vextar's 4 eyes studied her with predatory intensity. "You are their military leader, yet you come seeking terms of defeat. Curious. I'm a pragmatist, Captain. I've seen the tactical reports. Continued resistance would only result in unnecessary casualties among my people." The Zephyrian captain nodded approvingly. "Wisdom is rare among primitive species. Perhaps your people could be made useful after all." He gestured toward a section of the chamber where holographic displays showed detailed scans of Earth's major population centers. "Your surrender will proceed as follows. All military personnel will be disarmed and transferred to work facilities. Your government will be dissolved and replaced by Zephyrian administrators. Useful individuals will be selected for specialized training. The remainder will be relocated to appropriate labor colonies." Torres spoke up, his voice carefully controlled. "What guarantees do we have that our people will be treated humanely?" Vextar's expression shifted to something that might have been amusement. "You are in no position to negotiate guarantees. You will accept the terms offered, or your species will face complete extinction." The casual dismissal was exactly what Sarah had been hoping for. Vextar's absolute confidence in his position was making him careless. He saw the humans as defeated supplicants, not potential threats. "Of course, Captain," she said submissively. "We simply want to understand what will be expected of our people." As Vextar began detailing the specific requirements for Earth surrender, Sarah used the time to study every aspect of the command center. She noted the positions of control stations, the locations of security monitors, and, most importantly, the command chair for which Vextar directed the entire ship. The captain's personal station was a marvel of engineering, a raised platform surrounded by holographic interfaces that gave him access to every system aboard the Mothership. From that position, he could control weapons, shields, navigation, communications, and life support for the entire vessel. It was also the key to everything Sarah hoped to accomplish. Dr. Vasquez was asking technical questions about the integration process, her scientific curiosity apparently overcoming her diplomatic caution. But Sarah recognized the real purpose of her questions. Elena was gathering information about Zephyrian psychology and social structure that would be crucial in the next phase of their mission. Your species shows remarkable adaptability, Vextar was saying. With proper guidance, humans might actually prove more useful than initially estimated. The casual condescension in his tone made Sarah's jaw clench involuntarily. But she forced herself to maintain her defeated posture while she completed her assessment of the command center's defenses. The good news was that internal security was indeed minimal. The Zephyrians had never faced a serious threat from within their own ships, and their precautions reflected that historical reality. The bad news was that even minimal Zephyrian security was formidable by human standards. "Captain," she said, "my government has authorized me to formally accept your terms on behalf of Earth. What procedures do you require for finalizing the surrender?" Vextar gestured toward one of his subordinates, who began preparing what appeared to be an official document for human signature. "You will transmit surrender orders to your military forces. All resistance will cease immediately. Your leaders will broadcast acceptance of Zephyrian authority to your population." As the surrender documents were being prepared, Sarah noticed something that made her pulse quicken. The command center's security station showed the locations of all personnel throughout the ship, and, according to the display, the corridors between their current position and the docking bay were largely empty. The ship was operating on minimal crew during the conquest operation. "Captain Vextar," Dr. Vasquez said, "would it be possible for us to transmit a message to our people explaining what to expect during the transition? Many of them will be frightened by the changes." The Zephyrian captain nodded magnanimously. "Your consideration for your people's emotional states is noted. You may transmit a brief message." As arrangements were made for the communication link, Sarah caught Torres's eye and gave him an almost imperceptible nod. Phase 1 of their mission was complete. They were aboard the Mothership. They had assessed the command center, and they had confirmed that Zephyrian security was exactly as inadequate as she had hoped. Now came the dangerous part. The communication station activated, establishing a link with Earth. Sarah stepped forward to address her homeworld, knowing that her words would be heard by billions of people who were depending on her to somehow save their species. But as she began to speak, her message was not the surrender announcement that Vextar expected. Instead, she began transmitting a very different kind of signal, one that would activate protocols that Admiral Morrison had put in place the moment she had proposed her audacious plan. "People of Earth," she began, "the time for half measures has ended." Vextar's expression began to shift as he realized that her words were not following the approved surrender format. But by then, it was already too late to stop what was coming next. The most dangerous phase of the mission was about to begin, and Sarah Chun was about to demonstrate why humanity's greatest strength had always been their willingness to attempt the impossible. The first sign that something was wrong came when the massive holographic display behind Captain Vextar began flickering. The second sign was when alarms throughout the command center started wailing in harmonious discord. The third sign was when Sarah Chun smiled. "What is the meaning of this?" Vextar demanded, his four eyes darting between the malfunctioning displays and the human woman who stood calmly in the center of his command center. "This, Captain, is what happens when you underestimate humanity," Sarah replied, her voice no longer carrying any trace of defeat or submission. "We've been studying your technology for years, learning how your people think, understanding your weaknesses." The command center erupted into controlled chaos as Zephyrian technicians tried to determine the source of the system failures. Warning lights bathed the chamber in pulsing red illumination while crew members called out status reports in their native language. Torres and Dr. Vasquez had moved with practiced precision the moment Sarah began speaking. The sergeant's diplomatic attire concealed more than improvised weapons. It contained sophisticated electronic warfare devices that had been designed specifically to exploit the vulnerabilities Elena had discovered in Zephyrian computer systems. "Shields are fluctuating," reported one of the bridge technicians. "I'm detecting massive power surges throughout the primary networks." Weapons systems are showing targeting errors. Called another. Something is interfering with our fire control computers. Vextar spun toward his communications officer. Alert security. Initiate lockdown protocols. But when the officer attempted to activate the ship's security systems, nothing happened. The internal communication network that connected all 12,000 crew members had been severed by a virus that Dr. Vasquez had spent 3 years developing. A piece of malicious code designed to exploit the very efficiency that made Zephyrian technology so advanced. "I'm afraid that won't work, Captain," Sarah said, still standing calmly as chaos erupted around her. "You see, your people's greatest strength is also your greatest weakness. Everything aboard this ship is networked, automated, and interconnected. That makes it incredibly efficient, but it also makes it vulnerable to someone who understands how to turn your own systems against you." The Zephyrian guards who had escorted them were reaching for their weapons, but Torres was already in motion. The devices concealed in his uniform included more than just computer viruses. They also contained electromagnetic pulse generators that could disrupt Zephyrian energy weapons at close range. The guards' weapons powered down just as they tried to draw them, leaving them holding expensive clubs instead of deadly energy projectors. Torres moved with the fluid precision of someone who had spent 20 years in Earth's most elite military units, disabling 2 guards before they could adapt to their suddenly malfunctioning equipment. "This is impossible," Vextar snarled, drawing his personal weapon, a ceremonial blade that relied on molecular edge technology rather than electronics. "You are primitive creatures. Your technology is centuries behind ours." "You're absolutely right," Sarah agreed, dodging as the massive alien lunged toward her. "Our technology is primitive compared to yours. But there's something your people never learn, Captain. Sometimes the most advanced solution isn't the best solution." As she spoke, the command center's main display finally stabilized, but instead of showing Zephyrian tactical information, it now displayed a feed from Earth's orbital defense platforms. Sarah's coded message had triggered a pre-planned response that was now unfolding across the solar system. What the display showed would have been impossible to believe if the Zephyrians weren't seeing it with their own eyes. Earth's primitive defenses were transforming before their gaze. Hidden weapon systems were emerging from seemingly innocent installations. Defensive platforms that had appeared lightly armed were revealing their true capabilities. And, most shocking of all, humanity's small fleet of interplanetary vessels was moving into attack formation. "You deceived us," Vextar accused, his blade sweeping in a deadly arc that Sarah barely avoided. "We showed you exactly what you expected to see," she corrected, drawing the single weapon she had been allowed to bring aboard, a simple combat knife that would have seemed laughably primitive to any Zephyrian observer. "Your people are so convinced of your own superiority that you never considered the possibility that a species might deliberately appear weaker than they actually are." The truth was even more complex than Vextar realized. For the past 5 years, ever since humanity's first contact with the Galactic Council, Earth's greatest minds have been working on a single project, developing countermeasures against Zephyrian technology. Not to match it, that was impossible given the resource and knowledge gaps, but to exploit it. Dr. Vasquez had led a team of xenobiologists and computer scientists in studying every piece of Zephyrian technology they could access through diplomatic channels. What they discovered was that the aliens' reliance on automated systems created vulnerabilities that a more primitive species could exploit. The virus now spreading through the Mothership's networks was based on a simple principle. Zephyrian computers were designed to be efficient and interconnected, but they had never been hardened against the kind of chaotic, unpredictable attack methods that human hackers had developed over centuries of electronic warfare. "Navigation is offline," reported one of the bridge officers, his voice rising in panic. "Propulsion systems are not responding to commands. Life support is fluctuating in sections 7 through 12, called another. I'm detecting unauthorized access attempts across all major systems." The beautiful efficiency of Zephyrian technology was becoming a liability as the virus spread from system to system. using the very network connections that made the ship so advanced to propagate throughout its infrastructure. But Sarah knew that technological advantage alone wouldn't be enough. They needed to maintain control of the command center long enough for the next phase of her plan to unfold. Vextar was a formidable opponent, his 4 arms giving him reach and striking capability that no human could match in direct combat. But Sarah had spent years studying Zephyrian combat techniques through diplomatic observations and cultural exchanges. She knew their strengths, and, more importantly, she knew their predictable patterns. Zephyrian warrior culture emphasized individual prowess and ceremonial combat. They fought with honor and precision, following established forms that had been refined over millennia. It was beautiful, effective, and completely predictable to someone who had studied their methods. Human combat doctrine, developed through countless conflicts on a world where resources were scarce and survival was never guaranteed, emphasized adaptation, improvisation, and the willingness to abandon honor in favor of victory. As Vextar's blade sliced through the air where she had been standing moments before, Sarah was already moving to her next position, using the command center's furniture and equipment as cover. She wasn't trying to defeat the alien captain in direct combat. She was buying time while Torres and Dr. Vasquez completed their mission. Shield generators are showing cascade failures, one of the technicians reported. Whatever they've done to our systems, it's spreading faster than we can contain it. The massive ship's shields, barriers that had never been breached in 3 centuries of combat, were beginning to fluctuate as the virus corrupted the control systems that maintained them. Outside the Mothership, Earth's hidden defenses were already moving into position. What the Zephyrians didn't know was that humanity's apparent technological weakness was partly an elaborate deception. While they couldn't match alien engineering in terms of raw power, human scientists had focused on developing weapons specifically designed to exploit the weaknesses in Zephyrian defenses. The primitive missiles now launching from Earth's orbital platforms carried warheads that had been designed to disrupt the energy fields that maintained Zephyrian shields. The obsolete interceptors moving to attack positions were equipped with electromagnetic weapons that could interfere with alien navigation systems. None of these weapons would have been effective against fully operational Zephyrian defenses. But with the Mothership's systems compromised by the virus, even primitive human technology became a serious threat. "Captain," one of the bridge officers called out in desperation. "The Earth vessels are launching some kind of coordinated attack. Our defensive systems are not responding properly." Vextar paused in his pursuit of Sarah, his attention momentarily diverted by the impossible reports from his crew. That moment of distraction was all she needed. Sarah's combat knife found the gap between 2 plates of the captain's ceremonial armor, sliding between his ribs with surgical precision. The blade was coated with a paralytic agent that Dr. Vasquez had synthesized from her knowledge of Zephyrian physiology. Not enough to kill, but sufficient to incapacitate. As the massive alien staggered and fell, Sarah caught his weapon and turned toward the remaining bridge crew. The Zephyrian technicians were so focused on trying to regain control of their systems that most of them hadn't even noticed their captain's defeat. "Attention Zephyrian crew members," Sarah announced, her voice carrying across the chaotic command center. "Your ship is now under human control. Any attempt to resist will result in the immediate destruction of this vessel." It wasn't entirely true. Humanity didn't have the firepower to destroy the Mothership under normal circumstances. But with the ship's shields compromised and its defensive systems offline, even Earth's limited arsenal posed a genuine threat to the massive vessel. Torres had completed his mission at the security station, using the chaos to upload additional viral programs that gave them access to internal monitoring systems throughout the ship. Now they could see the locations of all crew members and coordinate their responses to any counterattack attempts. Dr. Vasquez was working at the ship's main computer interface, her fingers dancing across controls that had been designed for alien hands. Years of preparation were paying off as she navigated through systems she had only studied in theory, implementing commands that would give them complete control over the mothership's vital functions. Life support is now under our control, she reported. Navigation, propulsion, weapons, and communications are all responding to our commands. The Zephyrian bridge crew stood frozen in disbelief as they realized the impossible had occurred. Their invincible mothership, the pride of their empire, had been captured by 3 representatives of a species they had dismissed as primitive and helpless. "This cannot be," whispered one of the technicians. "No species has ever captured a Zephyrian vessel." "No species has ever tried," Sarah corrected. "Your people have been so successful for so long that you forgot the most important lesson in warfare. Never underestimate your opponent." The ship's communications system crackled to life as reports flooded in from throughout the vessel. Zephyrian crew members were trapped in sections where the life support had been temporarily shut down. Others found themselves locked in their quarters by security systems that no longer recognized their authorization codes. The virus had spread through every network, turning the ship's own efficiency against its crew. Automated systems designed to maintain optimal conditions throughout the massive vessel were now working to keep the Zephyrians contained while the humans consolidated their control. "What are your demands?" Vextar asked, his voice slurred by the paralytic agent, but still carrying a note of command authority. Sarah looked down at the defeated captain, then turned her attention to the holographic display that showed Earth's solar system. The human fleet was moving into defensive positions around their homeworld while Zephyrian vessels throughout the system remained motionless, their crews uncertain how to respond to the impossible situation. "Our demands are simple, Captain," she said. "Your empire will withdraw from Earth's solar system immediately. You will transmit a message to the Galactic Council explaining that humanity is not to be underestimated, and you will ensure that no other species makes the mistake of viewing Earth as easy prey." The Zephyrian captain's eyes burned with rage and humiliation, but he was in no position to refuse. His magnificent ship had become his prison, and the primitive humans he had come to conquer were now his captors. But Sarah knew that capturing the mothership was only the beginning. The real test would come when other Zephyrian vessels arrived to investigate what had happened to their flagship. She needed to turn this tactical victory into a strategic advantage that would protect Earth for generations to come. The most dangerous phase of the mission was yet to come. Commander Sarah Chun stood at the captain station of the most powerful warship in galactic history, her hands resting on controls that could reshape the balance of power across dozens of star systems. The irony wasn't lost on her. 12 hours ago, she had been preparing Earth's hopeless defense against an overwhelming enemy. Now, she commanded the very vessel that had been meant to destroy her homeworld. The main holographic display showed a sight that would have seemed impossible that morning. The Zephyrian mothership Dominion's Edge, flying in formation with Earth's modest fleet, heading toward the edge of the solar system, where 3 more Zephyrian vessels waited in growing confusion. "Ma'am," Torres reported from the communications station, "we're receiving priority transmissions from the other Zephyrian ships. They're demanding to know why Captain Vextar isn't responding to their hails." "And what about our virus propagation?" Sarah asked, keeping her attention focused on the tactical display that showed the positions of all vessels in the system. Dr. Vasquez looked up from the engineering station where she had been monitoring the spread of their electronic warfare programs. "The virus has achieved complete integration with the ship's systems. We have total control over all major functions. More importantly, I've been able to download their complete database of Zephyrian military technology and tactical doctrine." The significance of that information was staggering. In a single day, humanity had gained access to centuries of advanced alien knowledge, weapons technology, faster-than-light travel systems, defensive capabilities, and detailed intelligence about dozens of other species throughout the galaxy. But Sarah knew that knowledge alone wouldn't be enough to protect Earth. They needed to use their current advantage to establish a permanent deterrent against future aggression. "Open a communication channel to the lead Zephyrian vessel," she ordered. The main display shifted to show the bridge of another mothership, though this one was smaller than the Dominion's edge. A Zephyrian commander appeared on screen, his scaled features twisted in confusion and growing alarm. This is Admiral Krexuten of the Imperial Fleet. You will identify yourself immediately and explain why you are aboard Captain Vextar's vessel. Sarah stepped into view of the camera, still wearing the diplomatic attire she had put on that morning. But her posture and expression were no longer those of a defeated supplicant seeking terms of surrender. "I am Commander Sarah Chun of the Terran Defense Force," she announced. "Captain Vextar and his crew are now under human authority. The Dominion's edge has been claimed as a prize of war." The silence that followed was profound. In the background of the Zephyrian bridge, Sarah could see crew members turning from their stations to stare at the display in disbelief. "That is impossible," Admiral Krexuten finally managed. "No species has ever captured a Zephyrian vessel. Our technology is far beyond your primitive understanding." "Your technology is indeed impressive," Sarah agreed. "But it has one critical flaw. It assumes that your opponents will fight using conventional methods. Humanity has never been particularly conventional." To demonstrate her point, Sarah gestured to Dr. Vasquez, who activated one of the mothership's secondary weapon systems. A beam of energy lanced out toward an uninhabited asteroid in the outer system, vaporizing the rocky body completely. The display of power was casual, almost negligent, but the message was clear. Humans now wielded Zephyrian weapons. "You see, Admiral, your people made a fundamental error in judgment. You assumed that technological superiority guaranteed victory. But throughout human history, smaller, weaker forces have defeated larger, stronger ones through superior tactics, better intelligence, and the willingness to attempt strategies that their enemies considered impossible." The Zephyrian admiral's forearms gestured in what Sarah had learned was a sign of extreme agitation. "What are your demands?" "Earth's demands are straightforward," Sarah replied, consulting a list she had prepared during the hours since taking control of the mothership. "First, the immediate withdrawal of all Zephyrian forces from Terran space. Second, formal recognition of humanity as a sovereign species with full galactic territorial rights. Third, the establishment of diplomatic relations based on mutual respect rather than conquest." Krexuten's expression shifted through a range of emotions that Sarah was still learning to read on alien features. "You speak of demands as though you have the power to enforce them. You control one ship against the might of the entire Zephyrian Empire. Actually, Admiral, I think you'll find our position is stronger than you realize." Sarah nodded to Torres, who activated a new display showing real-time intelligence gathered from the captured ship's databases. What appeared on the screen made the Zephyrian admiral recoil visibly. The display showed detailed tactical assessments of Zephyrian military forces throughout the galactic sector. Ship positions, fleet strengths, supply lines, defensive installations, everything that would be needed to coordinate a devastating attack against the Empire's infrastructure. "Your ship's computers contain incredibly detailed information about Zephyrian military operations," Sarah explained. "Patrol routes, base locations, fleet deployments, communication protocols, all of it now in human hands." But the real surprise came when Dr. Vasquez activated another program she had discovered in the ship's databases. The display shifted to show a galaxy-wide communication network that connected every Zephyrian vessel and installation. "More importantly," Sarah continued, "your people's reliance on network systems means that the virus we've developed can be transmitted to any Zephyrian vessel that establishes communication contact with this ship. In fact, the transmission has already begun." Admiral Krexuten spun toward his own crew as alarms began sounding on his bridge. His ship's systems were beginning to show the same cascade failures that had crippled the Dominion's edge. "You cannot do this," he protested, but his voice lacked conviction as his crew reported system malfunctions spreading throughout their vessel. "We're not doing anything hostile, Admiral," Sarah replied calmly. "We're simply sharing some of our technological innovations with your people." Consider it a cultural exchange. The truth was even more devastating than the Zephyrian commander realized. The virus wasn't just affecting his ship, it was propagating through the entire Imperial communication network, spreading to every Zephyrian installation it could reach. Within hours, the Empire's technological advantage would be neutralized across multiple star systems. Your choice is simple, Sarah continued. Accept our diplomatic terms and receive the antiviral programs that will restore your systems to full functionality. Or refuse and watch your entire fleet become as helpless as your current vessel. Through the communication link, Sarah could hear the chaos spreading across the Zephyrian bridge as more systems failed. The aliens who had considered themselves the masters of galactic technology were experiencing the same helplessness that humanity had faced that morning. This is an act of war, Krexuden declared, though his position was clearly desperate. No, admitted. An act of war was pointing weapons at a peaceful world and demanding unconditional surrender. What we're doing is defending ourselves using the only advantage we have, the ability to think creatively under pressure. Sarah gestured toward the tactical display, where the positions of the other Zephyrian vessels showed them moving into defensive formations as their systems became increasingly unreliable. Your people have been successful for so long that you've forgotten what it's like to face an opponent who has nothing to lose. Humans have spent their entire evolutionary history fighting against superior odds. We've learned to survive by being unpredictable, adaptable, and willing to take risks that more advanced species would never consider. The communication link crackled as another Zephyrian vessel attempted to join the conversation. This one belonged to Sub-Admiral Thexmore, whose ship was already showing signs of viral infection. Commander Chun, the new alien said, his tone notably more diplomatic than his colleagues had been, perhaps we can discuss terms that would be mutually beneficial. Sarah smiled, recognizing the shift in attitude that came when an enemy realized their position was untenable. I'm always willing to discuss reasonable terms, Sub-Admiral. What assurances can you provide that Earth will not use captured Zephyrian technology for aggressive purposes? It was a reasonable question, and one that Sarah had anticipated. Sub-Admiral, humanity has no interest in building an empire. We want to explore the galaxy, establish trade relationships, and contribute to galactic civilization. But we also want to ensure that no one ever again makes the mistake of viewing Earth as easy prey. She activated another display, this one showing detailed plans that Dr. Vasquez had discovered in the ship's databases. The information revealed the scope of Zephyrian expansion plans, not just for Earth, but for dozens of other worlds throughout the sector. Your empire has been targeting primitive species for conquest because they represent easy victories. What we're proposing is a different approach, one where technological development becomes a collaborative effort rather than a tool for domination. The hours that followed involved complex negotiations as more Zephyrian vessels arrived in the system, only to find their own technology compromised by the spreading virus. What had begun as a simple conquest operation became a diplomatic crisis that would reshape galactic politics. Admiral Morrison's voice crackled through the communication system from Earth's orbital command center. Sarah, we're monitoring the situation from here. The Galactic Council is requesting an emergency session to address what they're calling the human crisis. Tell them we'll be happy to attend. Admiral, Sarah replied. But this time, humanity will be participating as an equal member rather than a supplicant requesting protection. By the end of the solar day, 17 Zephyrian vessels had their systems compromised by human-designed viruses. The Empire's local fleet, which had arrived to oversee Earth's conquest, found themselves dependent on human cooperation to restore basic functionality to their ships. The formal negotiations took place aboard the Dominion's Edge, with Sarah serving as humanity's primary representative. The Zephyrian delegation, led by Admiral Krexen, arrived in shuttles since their own ships were still experiencing system malfunctions. The terms we're proposing are simple, Sarah explained to the assembled alien officers. Earth becomes a sovereign world with full territorial rights extending throughout our solar system. Humanity gains access to galactic trade networks and communication systems. In return, we share our advances in electronic warfare and system security, advances that could protect your people from similar attacks in the future. Sub-Admiral Thexmore leaned forward, his secondary eyes scanning the holographic documents that outline the proposed treaty. And what of the Dominion's edge? You cannot seriously expect to keep possession of an Imperial mothership. Sarah had been anticipating this question. Actually, we're prepared to return the vessel to Zephyrian control once our treaty is formalized and recognized by the Galactic Council. However, we'll be keeping copies of all technological data and maintaining the right to defend ourselves using any means necessary. The implicit threat was clear. Humanity now possessed the knowledge to build weapons that could threaten Zephyrian vessels. More importantly, they had demonstrated the willingness to use unconventional tactics that could neutralize superior technology. These terms are acceptable, Admiral Crexington finally admitted. But you must understand that not all species will be as reasonable as we have been. There are forces in the galaxy that will view humanity's actions as a challenge to the established order. We understand the risks, Admiral, Sarah replied. But we've also demonstrated that underestimating humanity is a dangerous mistake. 3 days later, Commander Sarah Chun stood once again on Earth's orbital defense platform, watching as the Zephyrian fleet departed for the edge of the solar system. The Dominion's edge, its systems restored, and its crew returned to full functionality, moved with its escort vessels toward the hyperspace jump point that would take them back to Imperial space. But everything had changed. Humanity was no longer an isolated species, hoping for the protection of more advanced civilizations. They were now recognized as a sovereign power with the capability to defend themselves against any aggressor. The database information captured from the Zephyrian ship had already revolutionized human technology. Dr. Vasquez was leading teams of scientists in developing faster-than-light communication systems, advanced defensive shields, and energy weapons that could match anything in the galactic arsenal. More importantly, word of humanity's victory was spreading throughout the galaxy. Species that had been conquered by the Zephyrians were requesting human assistance in developing their own defensive capabilities. The electronic warfare techniques that had proven so effective against Imperial technology could be adapted to help other worlds protect themselves from future aggression. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Jackson reported, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council headquarters." Sarah activated the communication link to see the image of Chancellor Vorthe K, the Andromedan who served as the current head of the galactic government. His crystalline features reflected the subdued lighting of the council chambers, and his tone was notably more respectful than it had been during previous diplomatic contacts. "Commander Chun," the Chancellor began, "the Council has voted to extend full membership to the Terran Republic, effective immediately. We believe that humanity's unique perspectives will be valuable additions to our deliberations." Sarah smiled at the diplomatic phrasing. "Thank you, Chancellor. We look forward to contributing to galactic peace and prosperity." As the communication ended, Sarah reflected on the events of the past week. Humanity had faced annihilation and emerged stronger than anyone could have imagined. They had turned their greatest weakness, their primitive technology, into their greatest strength by refusing to fight according to their enemies' expectations. Admiral Morrison joined her at the observation deck, his weathered face showing a combination of relief and amazement. "Sarah, what you accomplished was beyond anything we thought possible. The entire galaxy is going to have to reconsider their assumptions about human capabilities." "That was the point, Admiral," Sarah replied, watching as the last Zephyrian vessel disappeared into hyperspace. "We needed to demonstrate that Earth isn't a target to be conquered. We're a force to be respected." In the months that followed, humanity's reputation spread throughout the galaxy like ripples from a dropped stone. The species that had been dismissed as primitive and emotional became the go-to experts for defensive strategy and unconventional warfare. Earth's academies began training officers from dozens of different worlds in human military doctrine. But perhaps most importantly, no species ever again made the mistake of underestimating humanity. The lesson of the Dominion's edge became a cautionary tale told in military academies throughout the galaxy. Technological superiority means nothing if you fail to understand your opponent's true capabilities. Commander Sarah Chun, the woman who had seized the most powerful warship in galactic history through sheer audacity and brilliant planning, became a legend whose story would inspire generations of defenders throughout the cosmos. Her example proved that sometimes the greatest victories come not from superior firepower, but from the courage to attempt what everyone else considers impossible. And in the vast expanse of the galaxy, where countless species struggled for survival and dignity, humanity had earned something more valuable than territory or technology. They had earned respect. No one would ever again dismiss Earth as a primitive world filled with emotional, unpredictable creatures. They had learned to see humanity as exactly what they were: the most dangerous opponents in the galaxy when pushed to their limits, and the most valuable allies when treated with the respect they deserved.